Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. This is Fizawatul, and today I am going to talk about the reviews that I've done on 3 podcast shows related to English grammar. So, moving forward, first of all, we will talk about that how podcasts are a very good tool in order to learn and acquire English language and to understand English grammar, and how it helps students to enhance their listening skills, which ultimately also enhance their speaking skills, their pronunciation, and their accents. So, the following points that you can see on the screen tells us about that how podcasting is one of the best ways to improve listening skills, which is one of the most fundamental and important skill while learning English. And unfortunately, this skill is very often overlooked by students because their main concern is improving their speaking skills, and they forget while learning English that to enhance their speaking skills, they must also work on their listening skills. So podcast will not only improve your listening skills but also enhance your vocabulary, which ultimately help improve your speaking skills. And you will not only improve your vocabulary, but your pronunciation will also enhance. While listening to native speakers, you also may start adapting words and phrases used only by them, and it is not impossible that you might start sounding like them as well. Podcasting is a great tool for students, but we should not forget that podcasting is also a very great tool for teachers who can connect with their students without the limitation of time, space, and distance, and teach their students language from far away, and without losing any time. And the great benefit of podcast is that there is so much variety in podcasts, that you can choose the shows according to your routine, according to your liking. As you can get a podcast of 2 minutes, you can get a podcast of 5 minutes, and till 1 hour, or there are podcasts that are even based on episodes, and you can follow them. And secondly, podcasts don't require your full-time attention, and you can even listen to podcast while multitasking, and even while listening to it, it will have some effect on you. So moving forward, today I will be reviewing 3 podcasts that I have taken, podcast shows that I have taken from the Stitcher app. These are the following podcasts that you can see on the screen. The first podcast show that I am going to review is 6 Minute Grammar. This podcast show currently has 112 episodes. All episode ranges between 6 to 8 minutes in total. This podcast presents on every Tuesday, and they share a new key area of grammar. The presenters are Finn, Emma, Rob, Neil, Sophie, and Alice. So these are the people who are behind the 6 Minute Grammar podcast. The second podcast is The English We Speak. This podcast show currently has 301 episodes. Time length of each episode is between 2 to 4 minutes, mostly 2 minutes, and every week a new English phrase or piece of slang is introduced in a fun 3 to 2 minute podcast episode. The third podcast show is American English Grammar Review. So this podcast currently has 493 episodes, and it is also divided into 2 seasons. Time length varies between 2 to 10 minutes, and it is presented by Bill Green, and his and his goal is to present the podcast in easy to understand American English, which will help ESL students comprehend grammar easily. Moving forward, the first review of podcast 1, that is grammar, 6-minute grammar, is that the podcast was when I searched this podcast on Google, so there were so many websites that were presenting this podcast, and they have the podcast which gave the idea that this podcast is very popular among people, among students, among teachers. After all, it is presented by BBC World Service, so it might be popular, and it should be popular. The presenter speaks in a very easy to comprehend English way, which is that it is slow paced, so second language learners can catch up very easily. They are not talking in fast English, but in a very slow paced English. The podcast episodes are very rich in terms of information as well as entertaining. What makes it entertaining is that the podcasts are in conversational style and which makes them an attention grabber. And the listener can easily listen to the 6-minute podcast without getting distracted and ears towards the podcast. All the topics are carefully chosen to cater the learning of beginners and ESL students with easy to understand and short examples. Here I would like to add that the examples given by the presenters were very easy to understand and very easy to relate, even to people who are not of the same culture. They were very easy to relate, and I didn't find losing myself between sentences because they were not very long sentences. Sentences were short and again very easy to comprehend. And because of the speaking space and tone of the speakers, understanding the podcast was a very easy task. So moving forward, I would like to give some examples, some episodes I would like to share with their audios. There are around 112 episodes, as I've told you before, explaining 3 key areas of grammar. The presenters talk about tenses, use of tenses, verb patterns, conditionals, clauses, adverbs, articles, active passive voice, adjectives, and much more. So I will be sharing 2 episodes from this podcast series for better understanding of the review. So the episode I've chosen is on articles, and in a very fun way, the speaker Rob and Emma talk about articles while their co-presenter Finn tells a story about elephants in Cambodia, which in disguise is a very great example of how and where we use articles.
And me, Emma. Hello. In today's programme, we're talking about 3 little words, a, an, and the, also known as articles. So let's start by saying hello to Finn. Hello. And Finn, you're going to tell us about your time in Phnom Penh, which is the capital city of Cambodia. Listen out for the words a, an, and the. Yes, I was living in a flat near the city centre. I was lucky because every morning I saw an elephant walk past my front door. The elephant was giving rides to tourists. The owner told me that her name was Sambo. I discovered later that she was the only elephant in Phnom Penh. Here's a photo. Oh, that's lovely. Really nice. Yeah. And quite a few articles there. We had a flat and a photo. Yes, we use a before singular nouns, a flat and a photo. But in spoken English, it's a, not a. I was living in a flat. Here's a photo. Now Finn also said he saw an elephant, not a elephant. An elephant. That's because elephant begins with E. We use an, not a, before nouns that begin with A, E, I, O, and most words starting with U. We say an apple, an elephant, an ice cream, an orange, an uncle.
But in spoken English, an sounds like un. Finn.
An apple, an elephant, an ice cream, an orange, an uncle.
Now let's look at the and the. Finn said,
The elephant was giving rides to tourists.
Yes, and it's the elephant because it's the second time he mentions the elephant.
a first time and the or the second time. And it's the, not the, with elephant because elephant starts with E. Finn.
I saw an elephant. The elephant was giving rides to tourists.
Okay, and there was another one. The owner. Finn only mentioned the owner once. So why the and not an?
Ah, good question. And the answer is, we use the before a person or thing when it's clear exactly which person or thing we're talking about, even if it's the first time. Let's hear it again.
The owner told me that her name was Sambo.
So, Finn's talking about the owner of Sambo, not the owner of any unknown elephant.
Okay, so that's a, an, and the. Now let's hear more about elephants. Can you spot the articles in this sentence?
African elephants are bigger than Indian elephants.
Actually, there were no articles. Trick question, sorry. There's no article before African elephants and Indian elephants because we're talking about African elephants and Indian elephants in general.
Not a specific African or Indian elephant.
So in Finn's story, he didn't use an article when he talked about tourists in general.
The elephant was giving rides to tourists.
You're listening to BBC Learning.
So this is the one episode on articles and how you can easily hear that how they talked about articles within a story that was told by Finn. The podcast continued and they then talked about different examples. They gave different examples and they took a quiz from each another that how articles are used and where we use them. So it was a very fun and engaging podcast. And the second podcast that I would like to share with you
In English.
is the episode that was on past simple tense. So in this episode, Finn and Sophie talks about past simple tense and how we use it and how we form it with regular and irregular verbs, negative sentences and questions, and then the podcast ends with a quiz. So we use past simple to talk about an event that happened and finished in the past. The presenters give several examples of how we use regular and irregular verbs as well as how to form negative in past simple and how to ask questions. The quiz is the most engaging part in which the listener can also engage while answering the questions and self-assist himself. So here's the podcast
that we use to talk about an event that happened and finished in the past. Here's Neil with our first example.
Jack Dorsey invented Twitter in 2006.
Thanks, Neil. Now, we often find the past simple in stories like this.
The boy started running. Suddenly he stopped and listened.
Wow, sounds like an exciting story. And it had 3 past simple verbs. Started, stopped, and listened.
And they are all regular verbs. We make the past simple of regular verbs by adding an E and a D to the infinitive.
So the past simple of start is started.
The past simple of stop is stopped.
And the past simple of listen is listened.
Did you spot the difference in the pronunciation there?
Yes, sometimes the E and the D at the end sounds like a T. T. Listen. Stopped. Stopped.
Sometimes it sounds more like id. Id. Started. Started.
Or like a D. Listened. Listened.
Let's hear all three again.
Stopped. Started. Listened. Stopped. Started. Listened.
Thanks, Neil. So, listen out for those three different pronunciations of the past simple ED ending. It's simple, isn't it?
Yes. Well, we are talking about the past simple, but irregular verbs are not quite so simple.
That's true. Can you give us some examples of irregular verbs, please, Neil?
I went to the interview yesterday and got the job.
Very nice. Congratulations. And another one, please.
Kurosawa made some wonderful films.
So, the past simple of go is went,
Get is got,
and make is made.
and I'm afraid you just have to learn irregular verbs. There is no one simple rule for them.
But the good news is that the past simple is the same for all people.
Yes, it's I got the job, you got the job, he got the job.
The job, we got the job, they got the job.
Everybody got the
got
job.
the job.
Hooray!
Yes.
6-minute grammar from the BBC.
Now for past negatives. And excuse me, Sophie, are you hungry?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't have breakfast this morning.
You didn't have breakfast. Past simple negatives. This is simple. You just put didn't in front of the main verb.
That's right. Didn't plus the infinitive makes a past simple negative. I didn't have breakfast this morning.
So remember, it's not I didn't had, it's I didn't have breakfast.
I didn't have breakfast. I didn't have time.
Now, let's move on to past simple questions. Here's an example.
Did you make that cake? It's delicious.
Did someone say cake? Where?
No, sorry, Sophie. It was just an example.
And so this is how they continue with the past simple, giving us examples of how to use past simple, then telling us how to use the negative form of past simple, and moving on to the questions, and with very interesting and very engaging examples as well. Moving forward towards the second podcast review, the second podcast that I would like to review would be the English We Speak. The podcast was very interesting as it was educational and at the same time filled with entertainment. The speakers present language learners with new phrases and words in a fun conversational style. Learners can learn these words and phrases in just 2 minutes, as these podcasts are mostly 2 minutes long. The way presenters introduce these words and phrases makes understanding them so easy, as they build a scenario and use those new words and phrases in those scenarios. In this way, the learner will not only learn those specific words and phrases, but will also learn their appropriate usage. The first episode that I would like to share with you was the episode that was named Cringe. There are 301 episodes in total, and each episode the presenters have introduced us with new idioms, new phrases, new slang words with its appropriate usage. The podcast becomes entertaining by the scenarios created by the presenters, and we get to learn fun and interesting words and phrases. So in the episode Cringe, the presenter talk about the meaning and the use of the word cringe, which means that whenever you want to say that something is really embarrassing, you say that it is cringe, and it can be used as a verb and adjective, as introduced and as talked in this podcast, which you can now listen to.
Come to the English We Speak with me, Jiaying.
And me, Neil. Have you seen that new film about a wizard who makes friends with an ugly horse that turns into a beautiful unicorn?
Oh yeah, the acting is the definition of cringe. The whole film is so cringe.
Cringe? What do you mean, cringe? You don't like the film?
Don't like it. That's an understatement. It was awful. The actor who played the wizard was really terrible, and the plot was stupid. We use the word cringe when we want to say something is really embarrassing and makes us feel uncomfortable. It can be used as a verb or an adjective.
So you can say the film made you cringe, or the film was cringe. Why? Wasn't that bad?
Neil, it was so cliched. The acting was over the top, and the ugly horse becoming a beautiful unicorn didn't make any sense. It was so cringe.
But that's the point of the film. It was designed to make you cringe. It was that kind of humour. It wasn't trying to be serious.
Oh, in that case, I didn't get it. So actually, if it was intentionally cringe, it was quite funny. Let's talk more about things that are cringe after these examples.
Did you hear that terrible joke he told? It was so cringe. When my uncle starts dancing, it's really cringe. When she told me how she'd sat in the wrong meeting for an hour before realising, I cringed.
You're listening to The English We Speak from BBC Learning English, and we're talking about the word cringe. It can be used to describe something or someone that makes you feel embarrassed. We can also say cringy as an adjective.
Yes, so you can describe someone or something as cringe. So, like an embarrassing person or joke.
Yes, or even an experience. What's the most cringe thing that's ever happened to you?
Well, you may be surprised, but quite a few cringy things have happened to me.
I can imagine. I think your most cringy moment is when you arrived at the party dressed as a giant cucumber.
To be fair, I was dressed as a courgette. And I thought it was a fancy dress party because you said dress fancily.
It was so cringe. I meant to wear a fancy suit.
So we see how the speakers are explaining and talking in a very fun way, and also telling us about the use of the word cringe. Moving forward, the second phrase that was used by the presenters was easier said than done. And in this episode, the presenter introduced this phrase, which means that talking about doing things is easy, but doing them can be a bit more complicated. The presenters gives several examples for better understanding of the usage of this phrase.
From BBC Learning English.
Hello and welcome to The English We Speak. I'm Jiaying.
And I'm Rob. Hey, Jane, I wonder if you can help me with something.
I'm always happy to help, Rob. What is it?
Well, I haven't finished making today's programme, and I thought maybe you could quickly do it?
The program is not finished. Rob, just making a program is easier said than done.
So, it's easy. You can do it.
No, Rob. It's easy to say do it, but in practice it's not. Easier said than done is an expression. We use it to mean what we say about doing something is easy, but in reality it's difficult to do.
Okay, so making this programme isn't that easy. So what do you need?
Examples.
Oh, that's okay. I've got those already.
We said we'd find a cheaper house to live in outside the city, but that's easier said than done.
And that's how the speakers then continue with some very interesting examples that explain us and further elaborate how the phrase easier said than done is used. These episodes were very interesting. While they were short and they were only 2 minutes long, they had a very entertaining vibe towards them, and the listener can very easily grasp the concept of the words and the idioms that are used and that are introduced in these episodes. Moving forward, the last and the third podcast that I will review is the American English Grammar Review, which is a podcast show that is presented by Bill Green, who talks about English grammar in American English. His podcasts are very extensive and very much informative, covering a lot of grammar key areas. He talks about nouns, pronouns, adverbs, idioms, tenses, conjunctions, and along with them, all their types as well. Overall, he has covered about almost 500 episodes, and these episodes are divided into 2 seasons. And the best part about him is that he talks in a very easy to understand American English, which is his main goal, to help ESL students comprehend grammar usage without difficulty. His podcasts are filled with examples, which makes it easy to understand how and where to use these grammar keys. So moving forward, the first episode of his is the that I would like to review is on the personal pronouns. And in this episode, Bill talks about personal pronouns that are I, me, you, we, us, they, them, he, she, him, her, it, who. He explains the concept of the first, second, and third person, why and where personal pronouns are used. There are objective and subjective pronouns. The brief explanation of personal pronouns is then followed by several and very, very interesting examples of the use of personal pronouns in everyday sentences.
Personal pronouns refer to people. The personal pronouns are I, me, you, he, him, she, her, it, we, us, they, them, who. Why do we need pronouns? Well, pronouns are used for a few different reasons. Native English speakers often refer to a subject twice or more. In other words, making a statement is often followed by another statement, either to further explain or to reinforce a statement. We use personal pronouns to refer to gender, like male, female, it, and numbers, person, or people. An example might be first, second, or third person. There are 2 types of personal pronouns, subjective and objective. This grammar review is a brief explanation of personal pronouns. Ask your teacher to help you with this subject. Here are some personal pronoun examples. Can you find the personal pronouns? Of course you can, because I'm going to help you. I would like some water, please. I is your personal pronoun. Sally said, you really must visit the new museum. You is your personal pronoun. He congratulated me on my recent promotion. He is your personal pronoun. Sally said she was going to the cinema later. She is your personal pronoun. Where is the key? I can't find it anywhere. I and it are your personal pronouns. We could go to the beach this weekend. We is your personal pronoun. They're coming for dinner tonight, aren't they? They is your personal pronoun. I can't visit you on Saturday. I have to work. I and you are the personal pronouns. You could visit me on Sunday, couldn't you? You and me are the personal pronouns. Have you seen Bob? He's usually at work by now. You and he are the personal pronouns. Could you call Irene for me? She should be home by now. You, me, and she are personal pronouns. The computer isn't working now. It must be broken. It is the personal pronoun. You and I could make the movie if we left now. You, I, and we are the personal pronouns. They will call any time. What should I tell them? They and I are the personal pronouns. Subject or object pronouns are you, it, one. Subject pronouns are I, you, he, she, it, we, they, one. Object pronouns are me, you, him, her, it, us, them, one. Have fun with pronouns. Remember, English has a basic foundation of rules and
So this is the episode about the personal pronouns, and you must have heard how he has explained the concept of personal pronouns, the grammar key, and there were several other episodes on pronouns of different types, and there were also verbs, the adverbs, and all sort of different grammar keys. The second episode that I chose to talk about was on prepositions, and in this episode Bill talks about prepositions. He gives us several examples of prepositions of time, moment, and place. It is a short 2-minute episode which mostly consists of examples of prepositions in different sentences, which you can hear now.
And time. Three of the most common prepositions are in, on, and at. In is often used with limits. On is often used when two things touch. At is often used with places or locations. Prepositions are used for phrases and time expressions. Slang, informal, and idioms contain prepositions too. Here are a few examples with prepositions. Can you find them? The question might be, are you at home now? And an answer might be, yes, I'm in the kitchen. Can you find the prepositions? Was it hot on the subway today? Yes, I couldn't wait to get off. Can you find the prepositions? Are you riding in the taxi today? Yes, I'm getting a taxi at the airport. Can you find the prepositions? Here are more examples with prepositions. Can you find them? Isn't it beautiful outside? Yes, it's nice at the park too. Can you find the prepositions? A question might be, where will you stay while in London? An answer could be, at my friend's home. Can you find the prepositions? Is she traveling to the sea? No, she's staying in the mountains. Can you find the prepositions? Here are a few word definitions. Do you know these words? What are prepositions? They are words to help describe place, movement, and time. What's a phrase? Two or more words used commonly. Hey, what's slang? Slang is informal spoken.
And this was how Bill talked about the prepositions, and there was a very brief definition of prepositions with a long list of examples that was given by him, which I found useful, because even though it was a very short podcast, it was a very short definition, and there were not much detailed and explanation, but for a beginner you get the idea that what prepositions are, and you can anytime move forward and look for more podcast of Bill's on prepositions. And there are also podcasts which are detailed and which are more long than this one, which talked about preposition in great detail, and you will have more idea on this topic. So this was my review on the 3 podcast shows on grammar, and I hope you all liked it, and you might have learned something new about these podcasts. And I would really like to recommend these 3 podcasts to you if you are a student or a learner or of English grammar, English language. I hope you find this helpful and these podcasts helpful as well. And I'm signing off. Thank you, everyone. Allah Hafiz.
In English.